Take a look at this. It's a simple, everyday loaf of bread. It's warm, it's crusty, and it's a staple of our lives. But I want you to look closer. Behind this bread and almost everything you've eaten today lies a hidden industrial secret. You see, the modern world doesn't just run on digital code or electricity. It runs on the ability to feed 8 billion people. And that ability is tethered to a single molecule that most of us never think about. Whether you realized it or not when you woke up this morning, you already depend on this. Your life, your health, and the very structure of our civilization are built upon a foundation that we are now being forced to completely reinvent from the ground up. This is a story about how we keep the world fed while changing the very air we breathe. The secret ingredient I'm talking about is ammonia. It is the hidden thread that stitches together our global food supply. Ammonia is the primary component of the fertilizers that allow us to grow crops at a scale unimaginable a century ago. Without it, the world's population would likely be half of what it is today. But ammonia has a massive carbon footprint because of how it is currently made. As the International Energy Agency's Ammonia Technology Roadmap confirms, this substance is one of the hardest to abate sectors in our entire economy. We cannot simply stop producing it, yet we cannot continue producing it the way we always have. It is the invisible backbone of our existence, and it is currently caught in the crosshairs of the global energy transition. To understand the problem with ammonia, we have to look at hydrogen. Ammonia is made by combining nitrogen from the air with hydrogen. But here is the buried dependency. Roughly 95% of the world's hydrogen today is produced from fossil fuels, primarily natural gas. When we split that natural gas to get the hydrogen, we release massive amounts of CO2 into the atmosphere. This is what we call gray hydrogen. We are essentially using one fossil fuel to create a chemical that keeps us alive, but at a tremendous environmental cost. The IEA Global Hydrogen Review makes it clear. If we want to reach net zero, we have to find a way to get that hydrogen without the carbon tailpipe. We need a cleaner way to build the world's most important building block. In theory, the solution is elegantly simple. You take renewable power, sunlight or wind, and you use it to split water into hydrogen and oxygen. That's it, renewable power, split water, done. No carbon, no fossil fuels, just clean energy captured in a molecule. On paper, it looks like a slam dunk. So, if the science is settled and the process is known, why is this so hard? Why haven't we already swapped every gray hydrogen plant for a green one? Why is the transition feeling so slow, so expensive, and so fraught with technical hurdles? The gap between the simple physics of electrolysis and the complex reality of industrial-scale production is where our investigation begins. It's time to look at what happens when these grand ideas meet the real world. Let's look at a headline that caught everyone's attention recently. Australia, a country positioning itself as a renewable energy superpower, bet hundreds of millions of dollars on a green hydrogen project. But look at the fine print. That massive investment was designed to replace just 7.5% of one single factory's gas consumption. This is a Rene Energy investigation into that specific project. When you hear hundreds of millions and 7.5%, it sounds like a bad deal, doesn't it? It sounds like a drop in the ocean. But today, I want to take you inside this project to show you why this specific 7.5% might be the most important fraction in the history of the Australian energy sector. This isn't just about a small percentage. It's about testing a model that could change everything. Is 7.5% really worth it? That's the question everyone is asking. In a world of billion-dollar megaprojects promising to export millions of tons of hydrogen to the other side of the planet, a project that barely scratches the surface of one plant's demand seems almost quaint. But in the world of industrial engineering, worth it isn't just about the volume of gas replaced today. It's about the lessons learned, the infrastructure built, and the economic hurdles cleared. This concept thumbnail, one subject, 3 words. 7.5%? Worth it? Is the lens through which we must view the entire hydrogen economy. If we can't make 7.5% work in a controlled existing environment, we have no hope of making the 100% megaprojects work in the middle of the desert. This is the crucial reality check. The project we are talking about is located on Kooragang Island. If you've ever been to Newcastle, New South Wales, about 170 kilometers north of Sydney, you've likely seen this industrial landscape. It's a massive hub of activity, a place where heavy industry meets the Pacific Ocean. Kooragang Island isn't a pristine wilderness, it's a powerhouse of the Australian economy. It is home to one of the world's largest ammonia plants, operated by Orica. This location is vital because it already has the infrastructure, the ports, and the logistics needed to handle chemicals at a massive scale. It is a place where the theoretical energy transition meets the hard steel of existing pipes and the expertise of thousands of workers. It is the perfect laboratory for the future. Orica has been making hydrogen on this site for over half a century. Think about that. For 50 years, they have been refining the art of splitting molecules to create the fertilizers that sustain our agriculture. But for all those decades, they've been doing it using fossil gas. The expertise is there, the safety systems are there, and the customer, the ammonia plant, is literally right next door. This is what we call embedded demand. They don't need to find a buyer, they are the buyer. They don't need to build a new port, they already have one. By looking at Orica's project documentation, we see a company that isn't trying to reinvent the wheel, but rather trying to change the engine of a car that's already driving down the road. This brings us to our central question. In the race to build a green hydrogen economy, we often focus on the newest technology or the biggest subsidies. But does having an existing customer and existing infrastructure fundamentally change the economics of hydrogen? We've spent years talking about hydrogen as a future fuel, but what if the most economic way to start is by plugging it into the past? If you already have the pipes, the tanks, and the people, does that 7.5% start to make a lot more sense than building a billion-dollar plant from scratch? Today we will deconstruct the costs, the risks, and the strategic choices that led to this project to see if integration is the secret weapon we've been overlooking. To understand the project, we have to look at the people and the money. This isn't just a plant, it's a partnership between three organizations making three different bets. First, there's Orica, the veteran player who owns the site and the ammonia plant. They provide the offtake, the guaranteed demand. Then there's Plug Power, the technology bet, supplying their GenEco PEM electrolyzer. And finally, there's the public money. The Australian federal and state governments are heavily involved. Through Orina's Hydrogen Head Start program, there is a production credit, which acts as a revenue support mechanism. Additionally, the government has provided around $70 million in direct grants. This is a complex dance of private industry risk and public policy support, where everyone is betting that this small step leads to a giant leap. Let's talk engineering, but only what the story needs. The heart of the project is a 50 MW PEM electrolyzer. To give you context, that is a significant jump in scale from previous pilots. This system is grid connected, meaning it draws power from the New South Wales electricity grid, which is increasingly powered by renewables. It uses recycled water as a feed, which is a brilliant move to ensure sustainability without stressing local water supplies. Once the hydrogen is produced, it travels through a dedicated 720-meter pipeline. Not 700 kilometers, but 700 meters, straight into the existing ammonia plant. This short physical distance is a massive economic advantage. You don't need complex cooling or trucking. You just need a few hundred meters of pipe to deliver the goods to an existing industrial beast. Now, 50 megawatts sounds like an enormous amount of energy. In many contexts, it is. It's enough to power tens of thousands of homes. But in the context of heavy industry, we have to ask, how much hydrogen does that actually make? When you're talking about a chemical plant that operates 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, how far does 50 megawatts of electrolysis actually go? This is our first curiosity reset. We need to bridge the gap between energy input and chemical output. To a general audience, 50 megawatts sounds like the end of the journey. To an engineer at Orica, it's just the beginning. Let's look at the actual tonnage this investment produces and how it fits into the overall scale of the plant's appetite. The answer is 4,700 tons of green hydrogen per year at full capacity. For a single machine, that's impressive. But here's the kicker. Orica's existing plant next door can take up to all of it and still need more. That 4,700 tons is what accounts for the 7.5% of the total gas requirement we mentioned earlier. This data, confirmed by Orica and Orina for the 2026 target, shows the sheer scale of modern industrial consumption. It takes a massive, state-of-the-art electrolyzer just to replace a small sliver of the demand at one factory. But because Orica already has the demand, they don't have to worry about selling that 4,700 tons. They use it immediately to create low-carbon ammonia. The answer to our curiosity is that scale is relative, and in industry, you need a lot of power to move the needle even slightly. Let's talk about the number everyone gets wrong, the cost. You might see headlines about $432 million and think that's what it costs to build the plant. It isn't. That $432 million is a production credit from Orina's Hydrogen Head Start program. It is revenue support, paid out over roughly 10 years, and crucially, it is only paid once the plant is actually operating and producing hydrogen. The actual capital cost. The capex to build the plant is estimated between $245 and $283 million. This will be spent between 2026 and 2029 before a single ton is even produced. This includes the government's direct contributions. So, when we talk about the cost of green hydrogen, we have to distinguish between the money needed to build the factory and the ongoing support needed to bridge the price gap with fossil fuels. So, what actually decides the cost of a kilogram of green hydrogen? According to Rene Energy's economic reality check, there are four main levers. First and most dominant is the electricity price. Because this plant is grid connected, it is exposed to market prices. If electricity is cheap, the hydrogen is cheap. Second is utilization. You want that electrolyzer running as many hours as possible to spread out the high capital cost. Third is the capex itself, that $245 to $283 million range we just discussed. And finally, there is financing and lifetime. The cost of capital and how long the plant lasts will swing the levelized cost materially. In this analysis, we avoid false precision. We look at ranges because in a first-of-its-kind project, the assumptions you make today define your success tomorrow. This leads us to a second curiosity reset. If renewable green hydrogen costs significantly more to produce than the fossil fuel-based gray hydrogen Orica already uses, why did anyone approve this? From a pure short-term accounting perspective, it makes no sense. You are spending hundreds of millions of dollars to produce a product that is more expensive than what you already have. Why would a board of directors or a government sign off on this? Is it just greenwashing, or is there a deeper economic logic at play? To answer this, we have to look past the cost per kilogram and start looking at the value of a decarbonized supply chain. We have to ask, what happens if Orica doesn't start this transition now? Let's look at the contradiction of that 7.5% figure again. Why only 7.5%? If you're going to build it, why not replace 50% or 100%? The reality is that 7.5% represents a manageable risk. Even at this small percentage, the impact is real. We are talking about 26,600 tons of low-carbon ammonia per year. That is equivalent to taking roughly 26,500 cars off the road permanently. That is not a small environmental win. But more importantly, the 7.5% figure allows Orica to test the integration without risking the entire output of the plant. If the electrolyzer goes down for maintenance, the other 92.5% of the plant keeps running on gas. It is a fail-safe way to innovate. It's about building the muscle memory for a green future without breaking the industrial skeleton of the present. This is strategic, incremental progress. To really see the value here, we have to compare two models. Project A is the megaproject model, like the Murchison project in Western Australia. It's built from scratch in the middle of nowhere. It has great wind and sun, plenty of land and big plans, but it has no buyer. They have to build the electrolyzer, the plant, and find someone to buy the hydrogen, then figure out how to ship it there. Project B is what's happening at Kooragang Island. It's bolted on to what exists. They already have the site, the demand, the pipes, and the buyer is literally next door. One is a vision of a future economy. The other is a pragmatic upgrade of the current one. In the race to net zero, the bolt-on model has a massive head start because it solves the hardest problem in business, finding a customer. Let's look at the infrastructure you don't have to build at Kooragang Island. The land is already industrial. The grid connection is already there. They use recycled water, so the pipes are there. They have a trained workforce that understands chemical safety. They have the ammonia plant itself, which costs billions to build from scratch. And they have the port and logistics to move the final product. Compare that to a greenfield megaproject. You'd need to build generation, transmission lines, desalination plants, massive storage tanks, and export terminals. You'd need to build an entire town for the workers. By inheriting this infrastructure, the Hunter Valley project cuts out a huge chunk of the capital risk that kills most hydrogen projects before they even start. Sometimes the most valuable assets are the ones you already own. This brings us to a major Rene Energy assumption. What if hydrogen's hardest problem isn't actually making the hydrogen? What if the technology, the electrolyzer itself, is the easy part? What if the real challenge is building everything around the electrolyzer? The storage, the transport, the safety protocols, and the industrial integration. If that's true, then the Kooragang Island project isn't a small hydrogen project. It's a masterclass in infrastructure management. By focusing on the everything else, Orica and Plug Power are tackling the true bottlenecks of the hydrogen economy. If they can prove that integration is seamless, the making hydrogen part can be scaled up much more easily in the future. It's a shift in perspective that changes how we value these projects. We have to be honest about the public money, though. As we mentioned, there are two main instruments: the $432 million production credit and the $70 million in federal and state support. Here is the honest question. Would this project survive without that support? The answer, for now, is almost certainly no. First-of-a-kind industrial tech rarely clears the financial hurdle rate unaided. The support is tied to production, which is good policy. It rewards performance. But if that support were withdrawn, the economics would tighten sharply. This is the real dependency. The green hydrogen economy is currently being bootstrapped by the taxpayer. The goal is that this support creates a learning curve that eventually makes the technology self-sustaining. We are buying time and experience, and that costs money. Let's summarize the two models we've tested. Model 1 is the megaproject. It aims to build the hydrogen economy from the ground up. It requires huge dedicated renewables and carries very large capital exposure. It's a build it and they will come strategy with long timelines to first revenue. Model 2 is integration. It bolts onto an industry that already uses hydrogen. It leverages existing customers, demand, infrastructure, and workforces. It allows for an incremental stage scale-up with lower initial exposure. While the absolute emissions impact might be smaller initially, the speed to market and the financial stability are much higher. As we look at the global landscape, it's becoming clear that while we might want Model 1, we probably need Model 2 to get the engine started. Now for the Rene Energy survivability test. How does Kooragang Island score? On water and infrastructure, it's a strong. They have the recycled water secured, and the plant is already there. On offtake, it's also a strong. The buyer is guaranteed. For resource and technology, we give it a moderate. Grid supply is a variable, and while PEM tech is proven, a 50-megawatt plant is still a first of a kind at this scale. The economic score is moderate because it still costs more than gray hydrogen. And finally, policy dependence is weak, not because the policy is bad, but because the project is highly dependent on it. Overall, this is a robust project because its strengths are in the areas that usually kill hydrogen startups: the physical site and the guaranteed buyer. It's a survivor. So, where are we now? The final investment decision, the FID, was reached on July 1, 2026. Construction is starting now. But it's important to manage expectations. This plant is not producing hydrogen today. We are looking at a target of early 2029 for the first production. This timeline reminds us that industrial transformation takes years, not months. We are currently in the heavy lifting phase, pouring concrete, laying pipes, and installing the power systems. The next 3 years will be the true test of the engineering partnership between Orica and Plug Power. By 2029, we will know if this 7.5% bet was the catalyst Australia needs. It's a long road, but the first steps have been officially taken. In conclusion, maybe the question we should be asking isn't how big can we build green hydrogen? The megaproject headlines are exciting, but they might be distracting us from the real work. Maybe the question is, where does the first megawatt actually make economic sense? By starting at Kooragang Island, by bolting onto existing demand and using existing infrastructure, Orica isn't just building a hydrogen plant. They are building a bridge. They are showing us that the path to a green future isn't always a giant leap into the unknown. Sometimes it's a series of smart, integrated steps in the places we've already been working for 50 years. That is the Rene Energy verdict. Integration is the key to survivability. Thank you.